helped us conclude the session within the stated time. And I'm sure the message of trade ministers on a variety of subjects that have emerged from today's discussion will resonate with other members of the Global South, and the outcomes of today's discussion will be shared with all our member countries. As we conclude this session on Global South and resilient supply chains, I'm indeed very grateful to all the member countries for recognizing India's G20 presidency and the concrete and action-oriented decisions taken in the course of our presidency, particularly to make supply chains more resilient and inclusive. I'm grateful to countries, particularly Jamaica, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Oman, and others, for their remarks about India's G20 presidency. I would also like to acknowledge several other very interesting insights which came out of today's discussion. Chile and Ethiopia underlined the importance of supply chain diversification. Malaysia, Paraguay, and other friends talked about digital transformation and skill development. Zambia, too, talked about the engagement of contemporary technologies like blockchain, big data, data analysis towards more resilient supply chains. I also acknowledge Zambia's suggestion for greater private sector participation in supply chain resilience. Paraguay spoke about access to transport infrastructure, and I do believe keeping shipping lines open is equally important for supply chain resilience. Friends, El Salvador underlined the issues related to non-tariff barriers and reducing the cost of transportation. It's a subject that affects many of our economies, and I do believe a collective effort to address the challenge of non-tariff barriers would go a long way in supporting supply chains. Belarus also highlighted the role of connectivity, and I'm sure we can work together to support greater connectivity, be it digital connectivity, be it connectivity on transport, air connectivity, and other means of engagement. I recognize Oman's contribution about the role of FTAs, free trade agreements, to further grow our trade, our international engagements. Jamaica, South Sudan, Sri Lanka, Uruguay, Zambia, and other friends highlighted the importance of resilient and sustainable food supply chains. This was a theme which was almost omnipresent. Almost every member spoke about resilient food supply chains, whose importance has increased manifold after the COVID pandemic. Zambia and the Central African Republic stressed on investment and value addition within our economies. I think investments and trade go hand in hand, and I'm sure collectively we can all support greater engagement both on trade and investment. I feel resilience of supply chains is truly a critical backbone for our economies, as was reflected by all the friends who gave us some very, very valuable inputs and suggestions today. There seems to be an emerging consensus that steps need to be initiated to make our supply chains open, secure, trusted, stable, and inclusive. I'm also happy that our partners of the Global South are keen on harnessing the mapping framework that the G20 has endorsed. It will surely help us in understanding the existing vulnerabilities in our sectoral and product supply chains, thereby developing systems that make our global value chains resilient to future shocks. Most of our members today also underscored the importance of inclusive development, the pivotal role played by our micro, small, and medium enterprises in general, and women led businesses and startups in particular, needs to be recognized in our policy responses. This will help us to ensure that our journey of development takes everybody involved along, it is inclusive, and no one is left behind. This echoes with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's mantra of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, development of all together with all. Esteemed ministers, I am grateful for your participation and for your reaffirmation of our collective efforts, particularly in the different areas that affect resilience in our supply chains. The role of digital public infrastructure and data for development, highlighted by certain members, will help boost growth and accelerate development, thereby leading to progress of our regions. This call for action for implementation of enhanced international cooperation by some member countries will strengthen scientific and technological capacities in our countries. During the deliberations today, many members also acknowledge the critical role that data has in boosting growth and removing barriers to trade. In this day and age of artificial intelligence, I think availability of data is a strength of all our global south countries. And I am sure that when we work together, we can leverage our assets together. I'm also happy at our member friends welcoming the high level principles on digitalization of trade documents that were adopted at the G20. Excellencies, colleagues, friends, thank you for your insightful contributions, your commitment, and your vision. Together, we have the power to transform, convert challenges into opportunities, and aspirations into realities. Let us step into the future with hope, determination, and an unwavering commitment to make the world a better place for all of us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And before we conclude, may I request all ministers to switch on their video for a group photo screenshot. Thank you very much for your cooperation and for your presence. Let us all wave and get a group photo where we can all collectively show our presence and commitment. Thank you.